I'd like to welcome everybody to the first ever Grassroots for Europe conference, Where Next for Remain. Needless to say, it's fantastic to see this room full of people at a time like this. My name is Richard Wilson, and I'm the chair of Grassroots for Europe. My local group, which I chair and am a founder member of, is Leads for Europe, and I was also recently elected as vice chair of the European Movement UK. Thank you. Now, we in the Grassroots for Europe network decided pretty quickly after the disaster of the general election that we ought to set something like this up, primarily as a regrouping exercise for shell-shocked campaigners, sort of coping with the abrupt end of an intensive period of fighting to prevent Brexit from going ahead, which we now know is going to happen. The most important thing for us was to reach as many pro-EU groups as we possibly could for this event, from across the UK and even from abroad. Thank you for those who've travelled from overseas. And to bring them together with representatives of the national organisations as well. We want everybody who's been involved and will be involved going forward in this struggle to be here today. And it's really great. We've got over 150 groups represented in this room today, which is absolutely excellent. Thank you very much. We actually could have sold a lot more tickets than we have. We've got a massive waiting list, and it's been a bit heartbreaking to turn so many people away. It's also an opportunity for us to strengthen the connections between each other, which is something I always think is very important with these sorts of events. We're going to have to support each other even more than we already have in the years ahead. We've got a long struggle ahead of us, and we're going to have to keep fighting, and we need to turn this situation around as quickly as it is reasonably possible to do. I personally think it is inevitable that the UK will end up back in the European Union with our European friends and neighbours. Our geographical, our cultural, our historical and our economic links with Europe are just too strong, and they cannot be really resisted. It is nonsensical for us to be disconnecting ourselves. It has disappointed me and probably most of you that it has not become apparent to enough people in this country by now what a lunacy Brexit is. But I do think that it is not far-fetched to think that in a few years' time the Brexit misadventure will be viewed in much the same way as the Iraq war of 2003 is viewed now. And that's really what we've got to look forward to. But our job, of course, is to help our citizens, our fellow citizens, to recognise sooner rather than later quite how badly they have been led by some of our existing political leaders. I think, given what I understand about the makeup of this audience, that many of you will agree with my strongly held view that the future of this campaign is going to have to give a far greater level of involvement to us and control to us, the grassroots pro-Europeans, than we have seen up until now. When I look around this room and the people I speak to, the activists that I've encountered over the past 3 years, I'm very well aware of the incredible resource that we have right here and outside this room, and the capabilities that exist within our movement. If we could harness the skills, experience, time and energy of our grassroots campaigners, not only locally, but regionally and nationally, we could be an unstoppable force. And above all, please enjoy our last Saturday for now in the European Union. Let us be positive. Let us look forward to the Saturday in the not too distant future when we sit here again to celebrate our rejoining of the European Union. Now, I was sitting at home a couple of weeks ago on a Sunday morning, just putting this together with the team and thinking, who can I have as our keynote speaker to open the conference? So I was just daydreaming, just flicked onto the Guardian website, and I saw this headline: Remainers aren't going to vanish on the 31st of January. We fight on, sure of our cause. And I thought, that strikes a chord. Who wrote that, I wonder? The journalist who wrote that has virtually come up with a strapline for our conference. So I immediately sent him an email, and within the hour, he replied to say he would be delighted to open the conference for us. Now, I thought, that's impressive, thank you very much. If only it was always that straightforward to put forward a conference like this. So, it is with particular gratitude that I'm able to introduce our first speaker of the day, our first keynote. It's Will Hutton. He's one of my favourite journalists and economists. He started at the BBC, where he worked for 10 years. He was economics editor of Newsnight. He spent 4 years as editor-in-chief at The Observer, which he still writes for, and then he became chief executive of the Work Foundation. He's currently principal of Hertford College, Oxford, and Will has written a number of books on economics and politics, including Saving Britain, How We Must Change to Prosper in Europe, which he co-authored with Lord Adonis. And I do recommend that book if you haven't already read it. And if you have already read it, you will probably understand even more why he is a very good person to open this conference. Will Hutton.
It was great to have an opportunity. I was delighted when I was invited. It's a privilege to speak. I was thinking as I walked here across Parliament Square that it's only a couple of months ago, and I guess many of you were there too, that we were finishing the last of the 3 People's Vote marches. We've sung, we've protested, we've organised packed meetings, and it's a bit dismal, isn't it? An 80-seat Tory majority and Brexit in 6 days' time. Worse, I think, was that it felt in September, October, that actually there was just a chance. There was just a chance that we could have a referendum, and actually there was a very good chance that we could win it. Yeah? And it would not be the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats, who are kind of asking fundamental questions about their raison d'etre, but the Tory Party. I'll say a bit about that in a second. But Boris Johnson's now signed the Brexit deal with the withdrawal agreement. A new chapter in our history is about to be opened, he tells us. Get used to it. Rejoining the EU is inconceivable. I fundamentally disagree. Hey! Indisputably, next Friday is a reverse. But no, Prime Minister Johnson. The chapter that is opening is one of division, retreat, and decline. We pro-Europeans aren't disappearing. And this reverse, because that's all it is but the prelude for an advance. Now, there's not going to be one seismic moment of revelation, but a drip of bad and sometimes really bad news that will make the country look back on the EU as halcyon days. And here's something that you may find kind of what's Will been smoking. Rejoining the European Union in the years ahead is about to become one of the most popular causes in Britain. Step by step, the inevitability of geography, the necessity of trade, the need to assert common interests and values from peace to climate change will force us closer, not further, from Europe. It will become obvious we must be part of it too. Never, ever betray your core beliefs and values. Never despair. In a democracy, we argue our heads off. Have faith in good argument. Truth will out. For Britain can and must be at the heart of the European project. this pragmatic, tolerant country, a quintessential disciple of the European Enlightenment and its values of ours, will be quick to reverse its judgment as the weight of minuses outweigh the pluses. So, keep the flame alive. Paradoxically, although it's hard to believe, what we're going through will make this country readier to be part of the European project and ultimately strengthen the EU as well. Hold your heads up. The support for leaving, although was always thin, it was an unholy alliance of the old, the disadvantaged who had so little to lose they took a punt on any change, and for some of them, I do get that, I understand why. British Empire loyalists, right-wing zealots, and a dying breed of old Labour Bennites, one of whom, unfortunately, led the Labour Party. It's an inherently unstable alliance. It's not a permanent majority. It will fragment. And the last 3 years, all our marches, all those protests, all those packed meetings, all the effort that you grassroots activists have put in have not been wasted. They have permitted the emergence of a passionate, pro-European movement, the most vigorous and strongest in Europe, here in this hall now. Where there is economic dynamism, where there is youth, where ideas, goods, and services are traded, you find pro-Europeans in force, believers in Enlightenment values, in tolerance, in openness, in trade, in the delight of discovering others' languages and cultures, in we Europeans standing together in a hostile world. Almost every major city with a university voted Remain. They could see more clearly what was at stake. What we must do in the years ahead is spread our convictions to others, to so many parts of the country that were untouched by prosperity, felt isolated and neglected, and were so lacking in hope, they did the unthinkable. They voted for Boris Johnson. So I believe that majority in 2016 was ephemeral, and it was already dissolving in the autumn of last year, a crucial reason why the Brexiters resisted a second referendum so strongly. The election result, almost entirely the consequence of the Labour Party's criminally ill-judged leadership, masked the truth in the immediate short term. The Remain vote actually exceeded the Leave vote, but it was divided. My view is if anyone else but Jeremy Corbyn over the last 4 years had led the Labour Party, he would still be in the European Union. And the Tory party would be divided. But truth will out, as Johnson is finding already. He found it in Moustique, waking up to discover that Donald Trump had assassinated General Soleimani. Was he to side with Trump or with Macron and Merkel? There were the two phone calls he made were to France and Germany, and they issued the joint statement, dissociating ourselves from what was going on and insisting on restraint. There are no allies in Washington for imposing tax on the high-tech giants. They exist in the European Union. And actually we watched in Davos as Sajid Javid slid away from his commitment in last Saturday's Financial Times, saying, we're going to de-align with EU regulations, so terrified was British business that in Davos he had to placate and say, no, I didn't mean that. We're going to stay aligned, completely aligned. Because the priority, of course, is a free trade deal with the economic bloc with whom we do $250 billion worth of trade, not the one with whom we do $65 billion of trade. Reality will out. And that's another truth that will out. There are no trade deals to compensate for what we're losing. Even if India China and the US all did deals, it doesn't add up to what we're losing. Even if they opened up their service sector to where we're strong, which they're not going to do, it wouldn't add up to what we're losing. We end up net losers. It's why every forecast for economic growth in the next decade is really downbeat. What's also going to become clear is that the EU is becoming the global standard setter, the global rule maker. We will have to follow their rules in which we will have no part in co-creating. A company like Vodafone that built its preeminence on the capacity of us to make the rules over mobile phones, that's not going to happen again in the next 20 years. The task for us Europeans is forensically to expose the many ways these truths are coming home to roost. But we have to do more. We've got to build a better functioning capitalism. And that means, paradoxically, and actually this is also coming home to roost in the Conservative Party, Europeanizing our capitalism and not going down the Anglo-Saxon route. We need to be long-termist. We need to be more patient. We need to build companies committed to social purpose. We must invest in R&D, the kind of stuff that is second nature in Germany or the Scandinavian countries. Putting social purpose at the heart of their corporation. Of course, we've got to keep the best of what we've done in Britain, but we have to combine them. We've got to reinvigorate our social contract. Reinvigorate our social contract. Whether it be health, whether it be the homelessness, whether it be food banks. It means revitalizing our democracy. It also means that we've got to persuade the Europeans, our European partners, to become a bit more deft and flexible than they have been. We want to get back. We need them to find ways in helping us back. We need to set up joint councils on defense, on cyber security, on data, on health, spread of these viruses. So many things where actually the continent of Europe has common interests, and they must be expressed by common standing mechanisms to hammer out common ways of doing things. Above all, the EU must actually say what it is. I want to say a bit about this. The ultimate guarantor of Enlightenment values in a tough world and the greatest exercise in international collaboration in history. We've got to find ways of staying close to the European Union, as well as helping it to kind of help us back in, as well as us Europeanizing our capitalism, our social contract, and our democracy. That will be the way in. But that's not enough by itself. And I want to just say a word or two about this. These are, some of you who know what I write kind of over the years, you'll recognize this, but I think it's really, really important. We've got to talk from the heart. We've got to talk values. Because I think what we're confronting is a civilizational choice about whether we stand for the values of the European Enlightenment embodied in the EU's treaties and in its emergent constitution. And there are a set of interconnected beliefs which everybody in this room stands by, every single one of us believes in. They are founding principles of Britain, they are founding principles of Europe. They come in an interconnected bundle. First, there are objective truths and there is a public realm held in common for all citizens. It follows on, there must be freedom to think and freely express oneself, otherwise no argument is possible. Science and fact trump partisan ideology and superstition. There is a public interest expressed by government that is held to account by equal citizens who can turn to law and independent judges underpinned by an independent judiciary to protect them. All religious faith must be tolerated. Every man and woman matters. Thus, the EU treaties. The right-wing populism that sat behind the Brexit vote confounds these principles. Conceptually, it declares that the public realm is a fraud. There's only an aggregation of individuals whose fate is to pursue their own interest. There can be no resolution or common ground achieved by free argument. My truth Nigel Farage's truth is the only truth. Impartiality and public service are myths. Science can only be tolerated if it delivers conclusions with which I agree. Thus, why so many climate change deniers are also Brexiters. Law and judges who get in the way of the popular will should be brushed aside. We know that story. It took place a few paces from here. Only my views should be freely expressed, not yours. Christian faith is inherently superior to any other, and those other faiths, religions, colours can be mocked and derided. The EU, with its acquis communautaire, celebrating the rule of law, fundamental human rights, democracy, religious toleration, and fundamental freedoms to trade, live, and move freely around its member states, is an anathema to that philosophy, but not to us. So, a few words about the future, and then I'm closing. As America first dominates its politics, and even if we get a Democrat president, that will be the story there. China first with President Xi, Mr. Modi Hinduizing India. Those three countries with whom we seek these trade deals, kind of turning our back on Europe, are going to be hostile to those fundamental Enlightenment values. Even if they give us the trade deals we are going to go on our knees to get. So yes, the European Union is about prosperity. Yes, it's about peace. Yes, it's about making common cause on things that are fundamental to us, from climate change to fighting noxious viruses. And yes, it's about holding fast to European values. And to borrow the great Irish poet Yeats, we certainly live in a time when the worst are full of passionate intensity. But now is the moment for the best to recover their conviction and to dispel impending anarchy. Time for the centre for us to hold. And what I want you to do, okay? What I want everyone to do, and I put a little tweet out, to my amazement, it got 1.5 million impressions. It got even quoted in the Times. What a breakthrough. I would like everyone at 11 p.m. next Friday to light a candle as prominently as you can in your porch, on your back door, in your front room, with friends, by yourself, with others, in whatever group you're part of, to show that we are keeping the flame of belief in Europe, its civilization, and its values alive. Do that at 11 p.m. on Friday and use every power you have to spread the message. Please do that. EU membership is a civilizational fight. It's time for every one of us, in every exchange we have, to fight, to stand up, to be counted, above all, for Europe. Thank you.